I told you that the most confident person you know probably doesn't feel confident all the time? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Globe Guide podcast. And yes, even the most confident, seemingly unshakable people you know still get nervous before presentations, second-guess themselves before interviews, and constantly wonder if they're good enough. But the real difference here isn't that they never feel fear. It's actually that they don't wait for that fear to disappear before taking action. Joining me is communication coach, speaker, and author of the book Courageous Action. Please welcome Helen von Dadelszen. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks so much, Sadia. I am a communications coach, so I help very smart, even brilliant people get their messages and ideas out to the world with clarity and confidence. I am originally from New Zealand, and now I'm living in Switzerland near Geneva. And I have 2 sons who are teenagers. So there you go.
Okay, so let's get into it with our first question. For anyone who hasn't met you before, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, so I come from a background in recruitment and HR, human resources, and then I decided to come overseas for a overseas experience, and that led me to a wild and wonderful career, which was very varied. I taught English in Italy for a while, and then I moved to Switzerland, where I worked in the non-profit world, particularly in healthcare. And that is when I started to see amazing people who had incredible ideas, who were invited from all over the world, stand in front of their PowerPoint and drone on and on. And I'm sure all of the listeners would have seen this before. Hopefully your teachers don't do this, but because we can get really nervous and because many of us are not taught how to communicate, we go into a default, monotone, boring, I must get off the stage as quick as possible situation. And so that's when I realized that I could help people. I've got a background in theatre, amateur theatre, and in singing. And my parents were also very keen Toastmasters. And Toastmasters, for those who don't know, is an international club where we work on public speaking and leadership skills. And so I was sort of born into knowing how to communicate. And even though I was a very anxious person, and I still get very nervous, I found ways to overcome those nerves and still communicate. And so that's what I'm on a mission to do now, is help people to let themselves be swayed by the reactions they have in their body and the thoughts they have in their head that scream at you saying, this is a dangerous situation. Don't do it, but to actually push through and find strategies so that you can still communicate your ideas to the world.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I know I've definitely been in that situation so many times with school presentations, other presentations. Yeah, I do a lot of speaking stuff. I had my English assignment recently back in June, where we had to perform a bit of Shakespeare. So that was something that really put my confidence to the test.
Yeah, I did. And so how did you feel? Because I think this is really interesting to realize everyone has reactions.
Honestly, the only thing I did that helped me was to pretend that people didn't exist. They didn't exist. I was just performing to no one. Absolutely no one. And I mean, it worked. I got a 94 on that. So
amazing. Yeah. But how did you know you were nervous, Sadia? What happened in your body?
I was just freaking out. My hands were shaking. I was sweating. It was so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. But you managed to push through and did a good job anyway.
I'm very happy I did that.
Excellent.
My next question for you is, what is the biggest misconception people have about confidence?
That you are born with it. So many people come and say, oh, I'm not confident, or oh, I'm not a good speaker. And then they think that that's something that they don't need to do ever in their world, in their lives. And it's not true. You get nervous, yet you've done 3 years now of the podcast and you got nervous. I get nervous every time I come on a podcast or even running a workshop. I feel the effects in my body. And so this is human reaction to something exciting, something different, something new, something that matters. But it's not a message to not do the thing. Those signs are warning signs, but we can interpret them differently and say, I am ready.
I feel like that's something a lot of people I know also believe about confidence, like within my friends and stuff. They're like, oh, I'm just not a confident person. But confidence is really more of a skill than a trait, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think of it as it's not something that you can wait for or just hope to be, right? You have to work towards it. And that's why I talk about courageous action, taking small steps that you feel nervous about. So that's why they're courageous, but they help you to build your competence and therefore eventually your confidence.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting.
If you listen back to your first podcast,
oh God, it would be awful.
I bet it wouldn't be awful, but it would be interesting to see and to remember back how you were feeling, right? You were nervous, you weren't sure about the tech, are you going to find your words, right? But over time, you grew in confidence. And so now you've built up your competence in the area. Now you're skilled at this, and therefore you get less nervous. Hopefully you still get excited, the adrenaline, but you don't get nervous when you hit record.
I know I read your book, actually. It was a very interesting book, very well written. I wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you.
But I did read your book, and I know there was this section on the action, competence, confidence. Luke, could you please explain that for my listeners? Because that was something I found really fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. So this is what I was talking about, not waiting to feel confident. If we wait and say, oh, I'll do that when I feel good about it, I'll do that when I feel confident, we will never do it. The idea behind the loop is that it starts with action, taking a step, doing something, and it can be really small, so that you can prove to yourself that you are competent. It's like learning to do anything, right? In the beginning, I don't know, learning to speak a new language. You don't suddenly read or watch a video and are able to speak another language. You have to take the action, read the vocabulary, listen to the audio, etc., and then practice saying the words out loud until you feel more competent. And it takes time. Same as riding a bike, doing anything. It takes time, and you need to take the action to build the competence. As you grow in competence, you will also feel less nervous about doing the thing. And that's where you feel this elusive confidence.
Why do you think so many of us believe we have to feel fully confident before we actually take action?
I think it's partly because of what we see out in the world. We see amazing people speaking really well or doing something excellent because they don't share the journey they have to go through to get there. They only show us the polished version of the end result. Right?
I always say on my podcast about like social media, it's only the highlights. A day is a lot longer than a 10-second reel you see on an influencer's feed. So you shouldn't let that affect you as much as it does.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I love when influencers in particular show some of their real life and their messy moments, because that reminds us that it's not all polished. So I think that is part of the reason that we think that, they're just naturally good at it, but there's a lot of work behind there to get to that stage in anything you do in life.
So if confidence isn't something we're born with, then what actually builds it?
So you need to know that you're going to feel nervous, right? There are reactions in your body. So when we are faced by something that is new, different, exciting, scary, our body reacts before we do. Okay, so this is when you might feel your heart racing, your hands getting sweaty, like it for your exam. Your mind can go blank or can suddenly start racing. You can feel butterflies in your stomach. There are all these reactions. You can blush, etc. And these are reactions that are normal. And what can really help is to reframe and say, I'm expecting these reactions. I know they're going to happen. It's not something to get rid of, but then we have to manage them, right? So if your hands are shaking so much you can't even hold the paper, or your voice starts shaking and people can't hear what you're saying, that becomes a problem. Or your mind goes blank, you can't think about what you wanted to say. That is a problem. And so this is where we need to learn how to calm our nervous system to a state that is more productive and effective, so then we can communicate. And then with time, as we build this muscle and build this reaction, we don't recognize those reactions as stop signs. We know how to manage them, and we can do the action anyway, so that we build up our competence and eventually confidence.
I think these nerves feel so convincing. Like, they're so hard to just push through sometimes.
Because they are a natural human alarm signal that we have got from evolution that kept us safe, that helped us evolve as humans, actually. And that's why they're so strong in us. And some people feel them differently than other people. And that's simply it. It's an evolutionary thing that we haven't evolved out of.
Can someone still perform well while feeling nervous? Like, they can be freaking out inside, but seem cool as a cucumber on the outside. Do you think that's possible?
Yes. I know that's possible because it happens to me all the time. People always say to me, "Oh, but you look so confident up there." And I said, I was really nervous, but I still did the thing. What I have learned and what you have read in the book is how to calm your nervous system to a state where you can still be productive and effective, right? So there are very simple techniques that you can use to do that. And as you saw, so the first one is reframing, knowing that this is going to happen, knowing that you're going to have these reactions, you're going to feel nervous, maybe saying, in fact, it's excited, not nervous, right? It's a example that I gave in the book as well.
I read that in your book, that you said that the feelings in your body when you are nervous and excited are almost identical. And that's something I also found really interesting because I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. I remember, I think I said in the book, I was at a speech contest and I was walking around sort of shaking my hands going, I'm so nervous. Oh, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. Oh, why am I doing this? I'm so nervous. Reinforcing the nerves, right? And then another competitor turned to me and said, no, you're excited. I was like, oh, it was just an interpretation. So by reframing those feelings into excitement, that changes everything. It feels really silly and subtle, but it did make a difference to me.
Now I wanted to ask you some questions about confidence in some scenarios that my listeners might go through in their day. So to start, what is something you wished more teenagers and young adults specifically knew about confidence?
That is not something you wait for, that you need to work on it. Like anything in life, to become good, unfortunately, you have to do the work, right? And I know this from my teenagers. It's hard to put in the work sometimes, especially when you don't really see the end result or you don't have a clear goal in mind for why you're putting in the hard work. It's so much easier to sit on the sofa and chill, right, than actually get out there and go for the run or practice the language or whatever it is you're working on. It's so much easier. It feels much more comfortable because when we stretch ourselves, we step out of our comfort zone and it feels awkward. It's an effort. And so I just say, repeat again, know that you have to work for anything, including feeling confident.
I always say that hard work is the only way to get where you want to be. So that definitely connects there. Okay, so my next question for you is, imagine someone listening wants to raise their hand in class, but they never do because they're scared they'll sound stupid. This has definitely happened times. What would you tell them?
Okay, there are a couple of things we need to do here to help them feel better and ready to take that courageous action. The first thing is, if possible, prepare. Okay, so if you know that, I don't know, you have a history lesson and there's something you hadn't understood or you want some clarification, write down what the question is and practice speaking it out loud. That's already going to make you feel better. And I say practice speaking out loud because sometimes that's where we get stuck. We've got the ideas in our head, but we can't translate them into coherent words, right? So say them out loud. Why is this important? Or can you give me an example of blah, blah, blah? Whatever it is, just say it out loud. Say it a couple of times. Put your hand up even if you need to practice, because this is all muscle memory. And when you're actually in the classroom or the lecture hall, you will feel like you've already done it. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and the preparation can also happen just while you're sitting in class. You don't have to do it before. You could just write down the question to help you feel a little bit more grounded when you're ready to ask the question, even if you can't practice saying it out loud. And the other thing that's really important is to regulate your nervous system, right? So what I mean by that is start to switch it off from this nervous reaction, so the heart rate and the shaking hands, etc., to something that's more effective for communication. So the best way to do this is through breathing. And I've got a whole chapter on breathing techniques. Now I'd like to hear if you've tried any of them. But the most important thing with breathing is that you need to take a longer exhale. Okay, so however you're breathing in, you want to control the exhale. If you think of a panicked breathing, it's high and shallow. So it's right. What you want to do is take control and have a longer exhale. So it's a breathe in and out. If you do it 2 or 3 times, just sitting at your desk, then you will calm your system to a state that it is more productive, and then you can raise your hand and ask the question. The other little tip I have is go early. Sometimes by waiting and putting off asking the question till later in the day, till later in the class, can trigger us even more. So see if you're ready. You're ready to ask the first question. As soon as there's the opportunity, you raise your hand, sit up straight, so you're having this power pose as well that I talk about in the book, and ask the question first. And then you got it over and done with. You can relax back into your seat for the rest of the session so that you know you've done your job.
Yeah, thank you. These are definitely things that I will be trying. This one actually really resonates with me because I do consider myself like a pretty confident, very social person. I almost never raise my hand in class because I'm scared of saying the wrong thing or sounding like an idiot. But these are definitely things I will be trying.
So, just asking you, Sajja, before you ask me the next question, what are you telling yourself in those moments? Because you just said, oh, I'm scared I'm going to say the wrong thing, right? So our internal soundtracks are very interesting to tune into as well, and they can have a huge impact on us and how we show up in the world. So I would say, why are you hesitating doing that? I'm scared I'm going to say the wrong thing. What else? People judging you?
I would say that too. Yeah. Namely, my teacher. He's not very fond of me. My English teacher. This mostly happened in my English class. It's a very difficult class, I will say. I take honors English, and it's very easy to mess up. And I don't like to mess up.
So you're a perfectionist. I see that now.
When it comes to school, yeah. I set very high standards for myself, and I like to meet them.
Yeah, which is very admirable. But just don't let the quest for perfection hold you back.
Yeah.
We learn when we make mistakes.
I think that's something I need to tell myself more.
There you go.
Okay, so my next question for you is, a lot of students avoid applying for leadership positions, whether in clubs, other school activities, anything else they might have leadership positions for, because they don't think they're good enough. How would you encourage them? And before you answer, I have a little personal story in mind. I almost didn't apply for leadership in any of my clubs this year because I kept thinking that I wasn't qualified enough or no one would vote for me. But I forced myself to do it anyways, and I ended up getting the role. I actually got roles in 3 of my clubs, which I'm very proud of. And I'm really glad I forced myself there. So what would you recommend to help other listeners out there do the same thing I did, or I'm successfully managed to?
So the first thing is, you can't get anywhere in life unless you throw your hat in the ring, right? Usually these clubs are desperate for leaders because it's work. So you'll be surprised at how little experience most of the other people have, right? And so I would say be really clear on why you want to hold the position. And maybe on top of that, think about how you will serve that community or group. Rather than thinking about yourself, being good enough, knowing enough, having, etc., the whole list, think about how you can serve the others. Being audience-centric can really help take the spotlight off you and turn it to the people with whom you're going to work.
So essentially what you're saying is try and shift your focus away from what you don't have to what you can contribute to your community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
It's not about you, it's more about them.
Yeah, because the whole point of applying for leadership is to lead others, right? So
yeah, and you have to be good at self-leadership before, and this shows that you're self-aware, that you're able to recognize your strengths. Often you can find other people in the group who are better at things which are your weaknesses, and so it's often a team effort as well, right? Even if you're at the highest level, the president of the club or whatever, the best leaders really gather a good group behind them or with them and use everyone's strengths to the best ability.
So, like I said earlier, I'm really glad I forced myself to apply for these leadership roles and push myself out of my comfort zone. But how can we tell when it's just self-doubt trying to protect us versus a sign that we actually need to do more preparation?
Well, that's a tricky one. That is a really tricky one.
Is there really any way to tell?
Well, I don't think there is. In any way, what difference is it going to make? If this is something that is going to help you on your path to become whoever you want to become, do whatever you want to do, then you will find a way. And yes, it's normal to doubt yourself. If you don't doubt yourself, you're basically a psychopath, right? So it's a good thing to have, to be able to be critical and think, do I have the skill set? And, if it feels too much of a jump, see what you can do as a midterm step. So what is that medium, small step on the way to whatever it is you want to achieve? Is there something, a stepping stone towards it rather than taking the leap? And then what's really important there is recognize that you take the step, celebrate everything you learn along the way, just having courage to do it. And then you will build up your competence and your confidence to be able to take that bigger role later on.
So my next question is about interviews, whether that be for a first job, an internship, or maybe even college for my older listeners probably. What's one piece of advice you would give someone before they walk into their very first interview?
I think we have to go back to preparation. You can't prepare. You can't over-prepare. Now, I'm not talking about memorizing answers to typical questions, right? But prepare, make sure that you know what you're walking into, who you'll be speaking to, what they need, what they expect, what they want, whether it's a job or a different school. So I think taking time to think about what you want to leave the person with or the people that you're speaking to. How I like to frame that is, what do you want them to think, feel, or do after your interaction, after the interview, right? So it might be, I want them to feel like I'm motivated and really engaged with the community. I want them to think that I'm competent and I'm constantly growing. And maybe after thinking and feeling something, the next step is, I want them to do. They want to invite you back for another round of interviews, or to hire you, or to enroll you, accept your application.
Yeah, I will definitely be trying that. To think about what do you want them to feel instead of just focusing on yourself. Because I'm actually going to be applying for my first job in the fall, my time to get me a job at a daycare. I really hope it works out. But that's something I will implement in my application process.
Yeah, remember, everyone's selfish. So how are you helping them? No, but that's it. They're looking for a future colleague. How can you show that in the interview?
Yeah.
Being them focused.
Okay, so my next question is, how can someone speak up more in groups if they're just a naturally quiet person?
Well, first, why do they want to? Being a naturally quiet person is not a problem, and you can get very far in life to do that. One thing that I think helps a lot when you are shyer is to have a framework to work with, more controlled and more using the time in a valuable way, right? So rather than blah, 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 trying to find your point, which some people unfortunately do, often they're the people who are less quiet, who are more confident. They just like the sound of their own voice almost. But if you're quieter, you can be very concise on your message and clear, and people value that you're not wasting their time, that you've carefully thought about your ideas. So there are a couple of different formats that I like, the frameworks that I like, and I think that one of the ones I've got in my book is PREP.
Okay.
PREP. So PREP stands for point, reason, action, and point. No, example, sorry, I'm getting my words a bit. Point, reason, example, point. Okay, so this means that instead of going, oh, blah, 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 no, you make your point. I think we should choose option 2. Straight out, no blah, blah before. Then you explain why. That helps everyone be on the same page. The main reason is that we tried option 1 last year and it wasn't very good. So this is why I think option 2 would be the best option. Then you give an example. The example gives the color to your interjection. So, for example, last year I saw the school next door, they did blah, 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 and what resulted was XYZ, right? So you illustrate it with something from real life. And then nice closing, because a lot of people forget to close. They go, I think that's all. Instead, you paraphrase or repeat your point. And that is why I think we should go for option 2. So this can really help smaller, quieter people to interject into a conversation in a way that feels safer because they have this structure, and in a way that feels really valuable for the people listening. They think, she doesn't say very much, but when she does speak, it's all valuable and well prepared.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit on perfectionism kind of stuff. How would you say perfectionism stops us from becoming more confident?
So perfectionism is setting the bar really, really high for ourselves. And what happens is if we allow ourselves to follow that tendency, and many of us have it, it cripples us from actually taking action. It's similar to waiting to feel confident. If you wait until everything is perfect, you will not do the thing. Firstly, I always think that done is good enough, and you learn along the way, right? So if you wait for the presentation or your thoughts to be perfect, you will lose the opportunities of growth along the way. And it's the same as we were talking before about, the influences and what we see in the perfect, curated communication or information that we receive. It's not the first time they've done it. There are iterations along the way, even failures along the way, where they can learn and grow. And so I would say that perfectionism is admirable in certain fields and in certain situations, but I would be very careful to say done is better than perfect.
I always say that to myself every single day. I'm like, hey, it's not perfect, but it's done. I do that for my podcast episodes, my blog posts, my assignments sometimes, honestly. I'm like, as long as I submit this, I'm not going to fail. I completely agree with that. A follow-up question. Do you think perfectionism is becoming more common because of social media?
I would probably suspect that, yes. Yeah, the louder are getting louder, the quieter are getting quieter. It's harder to stand out. Everything that we are getting is very beautifully curated and perfect. And we have to be really careful to fight against that, to keep reminding ourselves that this is just the tip of the iceberg and it's not reality that we're getting. And the best moments in life are from the failures and the unexpected, honestly. So live your life and don't hold back until everything is perfect, because you will not do anything then.
I can definitely relate to this because as like a student creator, obviously, I always see these perfectly curated photos, perfect content, and I feel a lot of pressure to live up to those standards, even though it is literally impossible for me to. I am a student creator with no money for social media, with almost no experience compared to these influencers who have this as their full career. I have very limited time. I spend maybe an hour a week on content creation, and I'm wondering why it looks like this. And that's why I try to prioritize more realistic content and, break the perfectionism standard, kind of, even the ones I have for myself.
Yeah, and I think this is really, really healthy. I always say to people that we're not trying to be perfect, and people don't connect with perfection as well. They might aspire to it, but if you really want to connect with someone through your communication or whatever you do, give some of your humanness to it, some of your imperfections. That's what people love about other people, and that can open connections and opportunities for real human connection and relationship. It's in the character and the flaws that make us unique and interesting, not in being perfect like everyone else.
I remember a few months ago I had an in-depth review published on a website, and all the time they kept talking about how my conversational style really pulled through, and I was actually connecting with people instead of using a whole bunch of professional language and really complicated editing and a whole bunch of fancy terms. I don't know. A whole bunch of fancy vocabulary. No, my style is professional. I connect with people, not randomness, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with AI, it's more and it's all the same. People, I think, will veer towards more and more human.
I pride myself on trying to use less AI in my work. Obviously, I do use it to assist workflows and stuff, but none of my content is ever purely AI generated. I make it all myself. My podcast scripts 100% done by me. Blog posts, the drafts are done by me. A lot of it is done by me, and I pride myself on authenticity, which obviously wins.
It might not connect with everyone, but it will connect with the people who you're trying to reach, and that's the important thing.
Yeah. So what's the difference between real confidence and just pretending to be confident? I know you talk about fake it till you make it kind of stuff in your book too, so I wanted to ask that.
Well, this is a tricky one because we need to act before we feel confident. Indeed, sometimes we need to put on a little bit of a show to help us through in a way. But what I would say is, if you are sitting small and speaking quietly, then you're not going to feel confident, right? So if you say, okay, I need to feel confident, what I can do, because you can't magically feel confident, as we've said, but you can sound and you can look confident. These are things you have control over. And that will make you feel confident. And it will make the other people think you're more confident. So really simple things. Keep your body open. Shoulders back. Show your hands when you're speaking. Head held high. All of these things send signals to the other person that you're confident and open and engaging. And they actually make you feel that way as well, which is amazing. And there's research behind this. Same with the voice. So if I speak really quickly like this, then you're going to think I'm really nervous or that I'm really excited, right? It doesn't sound confident. So I've trained myself to slow down, to finish my sentence, to have pauses instead of filler words like.
That's definitely something I'm working on as like a student creator. I naturally talk very fast. You can probably figure that out. So that's something I've really been working on, and it has gotten better, which is kind of sad to say, but yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like I personally feel a lot more confident when I'm talking slowly, articulating my voice and everything, as opposed to just sounding like gibberish.
Yeah, exactly. You're not being kind to anyone by speaking too quickly. Your audience won't understand your message. You won't have time to gather your thoughts and put your phrases together. Everything, you can lose everything in that situation. So it's really not helpful. I have a slow post-it on my screen that I'm showing you now. And for the listeners, it's just a simple reminder for me anytime that I see it to slow down, because it sounds like I'm more confident and I can actually think about what I want to say and give your audience time to reflect, which is like a power move.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try that post-it thing whenever I record my episodes now, because I have like this wall beneath my desk. I'm just going to stick one up there that says slow in like all caps or something. Thanks for that idea, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm all about practical tips.
Okay, so let's say someone finishes this episode and actually wants to become more confident, like they want to start today. They feel super motivated and everything. What are 3 things they could start doing this week?
To do what?
To actually start becoming more confident, like a more confident person.
To be more confident. First, I think you need to start recognizing how nerves show up in your body, because they will. Don't think you can turn this off. So even when I'm driving, for example, when something happens, I feel a rush of blood to my hands, for example, right? So start tuning into your body. When you hear the phone ring or you see someone's name on the phone, does that make your heart race? What happens? If you think about an upcoming exam, or, I'm going to have to ask a question in this class, what happens in your body? Start tuning into these things, these signals that you're getting, so that you will understand that when you feel them, it's normal and it's natural and it's not a sign to stop. So that would be the first thing. Start tuning into your body. The second thing is, maybe a really practical one, is to simply draw a circle on a piece of paper and mark out what situations you consider in your comfort zone and what is outside of your comfort zone. Having this visual map can be really helpful to figure out what area you want to work in. So maybe, way out of your comfort zone, you have, doing a TEDx or something. Okay, that's really far away, right? But maybe one day that's something you'd like to do. What's something closer to your comfort zone, just across the border, that could help you get along that journey? Is there a club that you could, open with introductory remarks, or go and speak about whatever it is you're passionate about, right? Something a little bit less ambitious than a TEDx that you could help you do that. So I think having a visual map of your current comfort zone and what is outside of that comfort zone will give you some clarity on the areas that you could work on and what those small steps are that you could start taking so that you start building your competence and therefore confidence. And the third thing would be practice a breathing technique. So I'm also a vocal coach, and I do not stop speaking about the importance of good breathing. But as we said, nervous system is the easiest way to reset your nervous system and calm it down to something that's more productive. Try box breathing, or the physiological sigh, or the 5-4-7-8. Any technique that is a good one, and you can find them easily on YouTube, one that you can try so that when you actually do feel nervous, you can use it. There's not the time to be learning a new technique. So that's one that you could practice right now, have ready to go when you do feel those nerves come. So those are my three tips.
So to kind of end off today, 2 more questions. If every single listener forgot absolutely everything we talked about today except one thing, what would you hope they remember?
You need to act before you feel confident. That's really that simple. Don't wait for confidence. Start doing the thing.
Yeah. I feel like that's very helpful too, because if you just keep sitting around and doing nothing, I always say this on the podcast, if you just keep sitting around, nothing's going to happen. You're sitting around. Okay, so that was a very good episode. You're here to share this milestone for this podcast. So where can listeners connect with you? Like maybe your website, you can mention your phone, anything like that.
Sure. So most of my social media action happens on LinkedIn. So many of your listeners probably aren't on LinkedIn yet, which is fine. I do have an Instagram channel, but I probably need a younger person to help me find a strategy for how to engage better on Instagram. So in the meantime, I would say you can find me on YouTube, where I put some shorts and some longer videos. My website, which is presentpotential.ch, and my book, which is Courageous Action. So you can find it on Amazon in the paperback form or Kindle in French or English. And my website for my book is Courageous Action.
So if anyone wants to hear, just not from the author herself, I did read this book, and it is definitely an amazing book. Very interesting, lots of useful insights that I will be implementing into my own life. So she's not just promoting her own book here. I can definitely speak for that too.
Thank you so much, Sajja. That really means a lot to me.
Yes. Okay, so that was all I had to say for this episode today, and I hope this episode really helps you out. And a huge thank you again to Helen for joining me and sharing so many valuable insights. To end off our episode today, I actually wanted to end with a quote from Helen's book. I feel like that would be a really special way to end off our episode today. And the quote is, "Only through courageous action can you build up your feelings of confidence." I think that's the perfect reminder to end this episode on, because confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from it. Bye, guys. Please don't forget to rate, review, follow, and share this podcast. Please, please, please go follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube at the Glow Up Guide Podcast. And please go follow Helen on her socials as well and check out her book. Drink some water, and I love you all.